can share this with the community. I'm going to stop transcription, so we don't really need that. And we'll get going. Okay, so
Excellent. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get my screen started sharing here, if you don't mind, while you do introductions.
yeah, let me do mine here first, Eric,
Oh,
and
yeah.
then
Okay.
I'll let you go ahead and go. Okay. All right. This is what we got going on today, everyone. Veeam Hands-On Lab to prepare for the VMCE with Eric and just myself as hosting. It's mainly Eric's show. I'm just here to ride the wave with you all. So um, this is what our agenda is going to be like today. I'll let Eric expand on that here in just a second. So for myself, for those that don't know me, I am, Eric, if you could take care of adding people in,
Absolutely. Go
if you
ahead.
get
I
that,
got you.
yeah. I'm Shane Williford. I'm based in Kansas City, Missouri. I am a systems architect and currently a Veeam, VMCE, and VMCA. I love those exams, and I'm thankful Chris is here to join us. He's a great Veeam trainer. I've really learned a lot from taking a couple of his classes over the years. Um, I'm also a Veeam legend. For those who don't know that, it pretty much means I'm active on the Veeam Community Hub site and am a local Veeam user group leader here in Kansas City. So as you can see um, from the agenda there, those are the topics Eric is going to discuss today, completing Veeam Hands-On Labs to reinforce course exercises, using them as a practice exam tool, going beyond the user guide, using your own resources inside the labs and building your own lab for studying. And as we go ahead and feel free. I discussed this with Eric. It is okay to ask questions during the presentation, and I'll try and answer them or pass them along to Eric, those that I cannot answer. Eric, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and you can go ahead and begin
Wonderful.
and do your introduction, and then just go ahead and take it away, sir.
Thank you very much, Shane. I'm thrilled to be here with all of you today. This is a great group, and I'm so thankful that I ran into Shane in Berlin at the Veeam 100, and he approached me with this idea, and I thought it was terrific because again, there's so many tools out there that aren't traditional study tools for the exam that people have the ability to use to help them get ready to be certified. And I think this is one of the strongest ones because if you're anything like me, and given that you're probably all engineers of some sort, I think we all learn more by doing than by reading about doing. You know, what's the old saying? Nobody ever learned to ride a bike by reading a book. You got to get out there and fall down a couple times to learn to ride that bike. But no better place. This is, falling down with padding on the ground because there's nothing within these labs. You you break them. Ah, darn it. Okay, you'll have to start over. There's nothing. This isn't playing around in your production environment at work, which is not a good thing, and you never want to do that, obviously. So this gives you the opportunity to try some things, to try things a different way, get some different instruction on things than maybe you got in the class. Or if you're somebody who can continue on and take the next exam, you don't have to sit in new class, so you don't get the access to those labs. Great way to make sure that you brush up and you cover every topic that's in things like the exam study guide. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm again Eric Dougherty. I was a 2023 Veeam MVP, which is the internal equivalent of like a Veeam Vanguard. Unfortunately, I was lazy with getting in my 2024 application, so I was not, but I got lucky and got to come over and support Emily with an event. So I got to join everybody for the Veeam 100 anyway. And I've got everything. I am putting in my application and hoping for the best for 2025 for Veeam MVP because I love being part of this community and I'm glad I can still be active in it, even if I'm not officially one of the MVPs. Just the connections that we make here are fantastic. So again, just even the Veeam community out there. I mean, the people that are logged in here and doing this event today is awesome. So use that community. But on to the topic that we want to talk about today. We're going to talk about how to use the hands-on labs that Veeam provides to get ready for your exam. And we're going to do that by reinforcing what's in the courseware. We can talk about the practice exam tools and how we can benefit by using those in conjunction with labs. We can talk about, excuse me, getting beyond the user guide, which is where a lot of the information comes from for the exam. So there's always good information to have there. And again, reading versus doing. How you can customize what's out there for the labs. We'll get a little into that. And then, for those that are so inclined, building your own lab, which I'm now kind of hooked on it. And nobody's going to have a lab like Chris Huss has at his house, I don't think. Maybe some of you do. But you can build one very affordably that can do the basics of what you need to do to learn these things. About the labs a little bit in general, they are available on demand. It's timed access though. I'm going to show you how to get to the labs for the different regions. It's timed access because, well, we can't just have them out there for infinity because they cost money to run. It's a timed access that can be extended as well. So usually what you'll see is it comes up as like, it's available for 2 hours and you can extend it for another 30 or 45 minutes, maybe once or twice. So maybe you get like 3 hours total. Yeah, that's kind of difficult if you want to do something more complex than that. But quite frankly, who among us has more than 3 hours at a time to study when we're doing these things? So I think it's perfect. The only thing it stinks is you kind of lose some of that config you might have done, but hey, repetition. You get to see what's in there and what you can learn and how you can do things. We have tons of guide scenarios. So not only are you going to, you don't have to just rely on the practice exams, on the help center guides, on the documentation you got from taking the class. You can do things a different way. Maybe you find out through your studying you're a little rusty on one specific area. You can use this to brush up in that specific area. So we're going to look at that as well. First thing, how do you get to the labs? There's a few different ways and it depends on where you sit. So what we have to start is on the left side for partner labs, you can get to them through ProPartner. So propartner.veeam.com if you're a Veeam partner, and then there's /hands-on labs. And I'm going to show you where to get to them on the interface momentarily. We've got lots of choices, and this is just some of the ones that we have out there. It's VBR, an advanced VBR, hardened repository, which we're going to be updating when the hardened ISO goes public with the final version. We're waiting till then. CDP, Veeam 1, Veeam agents, there's even more out there. There's tons of them. Publicly, so this would be non-partners, customers. We can get to them. We have 3 different ways to get to them depending on where you sit. So the top one, veeam.com, go.veeam.com /hands-on lab experience, that would be the Americas. Add the hashtag EMEA at the end and you end up at the EMEA ones, which are a totally different look, and I'll show you those. And then you have the APJ ones, which look similar to EMEA, but they may be a little different. There may be some language specific things in there too. I haven't spent a lot of time in them, so I'm not 100% sure. In the Americas, and you notice I have the words for now, and I have that in here a few times, and we'll talk about why that is. But there's same labs, if public and partner access in the Americas is the same right now. So the same labs are available, maybe 1 or 2 different ones for some marketing promotions that we're doing. The reason I say for now is starting at the beginning of this year, we are undergoing an initiative to centralize the public-facing labs. So that would mean that what you're going to see, and I'll switch over and start showing you what you can see here. Let me find that web page in my list of things that are open. Yep, there we go. So what we have here, I'll just show you for starters, how you get into the ProPartner. So you log in with your ProPartner account. You would think they'd be under learning, but no, you'd be wrong. They are under technical and pre-sales, and you'll see you have hands-on labs. And what you come up with here is a list of them. You click register now for the one that you want to run, and it'll start spinning it up in the background. That You won't see much else. It'll just say your lab will be ready shortly. You'll get an email when it's ready. And that's the extent of it. I'm not going to click on any of these because it's going to fire up a lab, and I already have one fired up to show what the interface looks like. But you see we have some that are, some with our partners. We have some great ones that cover some topics as opposed to some technologies. We're trying to build more around that so that there's one about like ransomware or security and not specifically about a feature. But we definitely wanted to have some in here that do. And we have some very specific ones like the RMAN plugin, things that you may not have a lab that you can even try in. Again, not part of the VMCE exam, but good for additional learning. That's what they look like from within the Pro Partner Network. Now, from the public side in the US, this is what they look like. Again, it's the same lab. So if we look through here, we can choose, we can filter. We have several of them. You're going to see several more. And the reason we're merging these is a lot of duplicated efforts across the continent. So EMEA and North America, or the Americas, are going to merge together. So you're going to not see it look like this per se. It's going to have the same topics. It's going to look like, sorry, the little, there we go. The little bar at the top that says I'm sharing my screen gets in the way of the tabs. We're going to have there we go. So this is the EMEA one. And what you're going to have here is it looks like the same page, but you'll notice that we have some different topics here, and there's some are very specific and then some are very general. So we're going to have the ability to have both. When that's going to change over, I don't know, but it's going to happen. But lots of cool different things that we have the ability to test out in here. Plus just some basic VBR ones. So what you're going to want probably for what you're doing for this, and the one that I fired up that we're going to use is the advanced lab from the Americas. APJ, we'll just take a quick look. Looks like the same list, doesn't it? So looks very similar. I think they work tighter together on that planning for that. Plus their stuff is more focused at the end user. So they're more end user based topics. We're going to, like I said, we're going to be merging those together. I don't know when that's going to happen, but the access methods for it aren't going to change. You just might see some different topics. So don't worry about that. They're not going away. They're actually going to be better for the effort. So let's talk about, we've seen what all those look like. So that's why I said it was for now. So how do we use it as a practice tool? First off, let's talk for a minute about the practice exam options that are out there. Anybody who's taken a class recently has a login to the Low Choice site, and that has some practice materials in it. It's where you go to download your course materials and things like that. We also have Rasmus's exams out there still. He hasn't updated them. I don't know that he's going to, because for those of you that may not know, Rasmus switched roles and is not in the education team anymore. He has moved over to some of our product team on the Veeam Ready group. So he's doing a lot with the storage and getting that certified. He's working with that team. So he's not necessarily keeping these up to date. So while the questions are still good because they really make you research, some of the questions may be dated. Some of the links to some of the information for the answers may not be available anymore because they may be based on an older version. So they're still one of the most popular things that people use out there. The Pro Partner Practice Exam is also very popular, and that one I'll just show you in a moment as well. Just make sure you know where that is for partners. I also we just recently got, you'll notice here I had the link for the Pro Partner Exam, but we'll go to what that looks like here as well. I also just found, and you guys might have seen it on LinkedIn as well, and some of the folks that are part of this community helped to write this, that Object First now has a little free practice exam. It's a good exam. It's not something I would say if you can pass this, then you're going to pass our exam, but I wouldn't say that about just about any practice exam at this point. But what I would say is it's another place to get some questions to jog some learning for you. So I think that that's still something valuable. You do have to give an email address at the end of it, so in order to get your results, but it's another good place to open things up. And here's what I suggest, and I hope everybody has 2 monitors, and here's why. Because I always say to make sure, you can read off one and work off another. First, though, let's look at where we find the practice exam in ProPartner, and that I have over at, that's in learning actually, so not technical pre-sales. And now you want to go to VMCE here. And you'll notice you have find class, view on demand. So this is what we do to get started with our practicing, or, with our learning process. And down at the very, very, very bottom here, we've got this link to the practice exam. We've got 40 questions in there. I can't remember now. I think it's 40. We're going to wait for it to load so that I can give you the real answer. There's 48 questions. So I was wrong with both numbers. 48 questions in there. The passing part isn't the important part. It's learning what's in here. And I especially say that because one of the downfalls of this is you get a score, you don't know what you got right or wrong. So it doesn't really help you from that perspective. But what it is good for is doing things while you're doing the test. So using an archive repository, when will a file from a NAS backup be moved to the archive? Here's the thing you can do with that. And I'll show you what the lab interface looks like now. So you can take a question from here. This is the VBR Advanced Lab that we have running. You'll notice I have an entire lab guide here that I can go through and do all these steps. So it can reinforce it just by doing step by step. So maybe there's something in here that you're not sure about. It's always good to try and see things written a couple different ways, which is, again, you go in here and do it. The more times you do things, the better. You're not good maybe at the hardened repository setup, do our hardened repository lab. You need practice with NAS backup, do the NAS lab. CDP got you confused, do the CDP lab. You'll get specific instruction on how to do that. The VBR Advanced just does some of the steps beyond basic backup and restore. The basic one that we have is really, I've never touched any Veeam products before. I'd like to see what it takes to get going with that. That is probably too basic. The reason I say to use the advanced is there's more stuff in the lab that you can work with to build your own environment to practice with. Before we go too far, let's talk about this. And I'll also show you how to use the exam guide and the lab together. But let's talk about what's in the labs. So the labs right now are fully functional. There's no guide rails. It's not a only can click here kind of thing where if you click elsewhere, it's going to say, no, that's not it. This is a fully functional environment. So you can do beyond what is needed when it comes to what's in the lab. So we have the directions for what to do in the lab, but you can do anything else you want to in the lab. So you can try any features you want. You can configure any features you want. You can follow the courseware and the lab guide. It's going to be tough to follow the lab guide. I'll be honest with you. There's a lot going on in the VMCE labs that's not part of this because they're huge. As somebody who has built them and others on the call that I know have built them, they're big. There's a lot to them. These are a lot smaller, but they're going to give you a chance to try some of the things that are in there, at least jog your memory on what you were learning and go in and see the interfaces again. Help Center is a great thing as well. So if you're not comfortable on something, guess where we got a lot of the information on how to do things for our step-by-steps on all of our in all of the labs. We got them from Help Center. So if you're rusty on something and want to try it, look at the Help Center guide, do the thing in the lab, and you're going to be much better for it. Or anything at that point. So it's a great way to do things. Let's go back to the interface now, and let's just take a look. So yeah, I'm on a laptop screen, and it's very hard to see these little things here. The nice thing is I can also go to a full screen. So if I have two screens, I could have that practice exam up on another screen that I was showing you. Click full screen, much more tolerable to look at, right? Now I can go in and I can do whatever I need to do. I can fire up the lab console or the Veeam console. I have access in here to, it's not a VMware exam, but guess what? You're always going to need to know something about that. So we have the ability to get into there. And the nice thing is somewhere in the steps to all of the labs, any passwords you need are going to be in there. So we'll just take a look at what's in the. I can't type today. They never type when everybody's looking. That's how it works, right? So you can see we're still using default administrator passwords. So you've got the keys to the kingdom in here for better or worse. We'll talk about how that's probably going to change to some extent. We'll just reset all those to green because we know what they're from. But you'll see what you have built in here already. You've got a file server, the hardened repo, some generic Windows and some generic Linux servers that we can play with. We've got an Oracle server in here that you could do some backups from, again, because we have that RMAN, that lab that we run. So we have that in here. So we have a couple different database servers in here. Domain, we don't have like Exchange and things like that, but it seems I don't see a lot of that in the classes anymore anyway, because most people, when they're doing Exchange now, are using the 365 product because most people are not on-prem. So there's not as much focus on doing Exchange in the class other than looking at the what you can restore in the Explorer is a lot of what I see is asked about, which you could find out in the 365 lab because it's the same Explorer. So go take a look at the Exchange Explorer in the 365 lab and see what you can restore and how that works. But you can see you've got tons of different things that you can do within here. And while we're running tight on resources, yes, we have to. There's enough resources in here. It's the disk that really is running probably pretty lean. But you have the ability, you could add some small things in here if you wanted to, download some, an ISO and build something if you needed to, or add some things. The cool thing is you can add anything because it's wide open. As far as what we already have in here, we've built some of the basic stuff. We've built some basic jobs here. So you can build your own, you can review how these are built. So you could create another job. You can create from in here, CDP, you can create different, replication to try that out, to try some of the, because there's sections I know on things like, doing item level recovery from replicas, things like that. You could practice those things, no problem from within here because you can build them. You can use our lab guides to figure that out. You can do it on your own. You can use the lab guides that came with the courseware. Because the cool thing is, as you saw here, we have this set up as 2 sites. So you can set up all the components and do 2 sites, one site to the other. Now it's a whopping 1 server per site. So you are resource constrained. We have to do these, as tight a budget as we can when it comes to these things. But it's really, whatever you can fit within these parameters, give it a try. Not that it's on the exam, but you also have the ability to work with Orchestrator. You can play with Enterprise Manager, which isn't something that everybody always has set up entirely, but you can try the Enterprise Manager lab. Not a lot in there for Enterprise Manager anymore, but it's not something that everybody touches all the time. So at least you can be familiar with the settings within that. I'm gonna go ahead and exit out of full screen mode here. And we will go back again, like I said, so I could go to the questions from here. Where did they go? There it is. And say, an archive repository, maybe I build out the, a NAS backup and see what the different components are. Where do things go? What happens within here? I'm not going to go ahead and answer the questions right now. But like I said, you don't know what you got right in here. So getting things right and wrong, you're never going to learn from what you got wrong because you're not going to know what you got wrong unless you straight up just know you didn't get it right. But it's great for saying, oh, you know what? I'm not sure about this. Let me go build it in the lab. And then I could go through here and build up, NAS backups, see what happens and get a better understanding for it. Read the help center guides, build it as well. All kinds of options. Then we have, let's see, I'm going to go back over to this interface. And so when I was talking about experimenting in the lab, and things are not locked down, like I said, here's another for now. So another thing with all these changes that we're making, there's going to be some security lockdowns to the interface. You're still going to be able to do what you need to do. I don't know what all that means as far as what we're securing. So things are going to look different. You're still going to be able to do things, but it's never going to be one of those labs where it's like you can only do exactly what the lab is built for, but you may not be able to add certain components. Maybe there won't be a way to add a server into Hyper-V. Geez, yeah, well, we do have some Hyper-V in there too. But you're not going to be able to add maybe a VM into the vSphere environment, but you're still going to be able to do everything that you need to do, I think, from a Veeam perspective. Same goes for how it works in the, think of it how it is in the VMCE class. It's very tightened down. You can still do a lot, but maybe you can't tweak all the back end things that you can't see. So maybe you won't be able to add some VMs, and maybe you won't be able to download certain things. But you can also add your own components. So like you could add a cloud account so that you could practice setting up a scale out repository that sends information to, your favorite, you already have a cloud account. I know I have a couple demo accounts that the vendors have given me, which I use in my labs, I use for personal stuff. And I like to add those. You can add those in, set something up, and have it run, just to see how that scale out repository works, see how everything, see how, as far as when data moves from one place to another, set up some backup copy jobs, maybe to take advantage of it, set up some direct jobs, just tons of different things you can do. But the main thing to remember is it is timed. So don't spend all your time on the setup and then ever actually get to do the thing you were setting it up for. So you maybe want to focus more on using what's there. And there's a lot there, but you do have some flexibility to try some new things. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand that, yes, you can do anything. Keys to the kingdom. There's, and we all know, because we're all engineers, giving full admin to people is just a recipe for disaster. Now we've done that, and we've had a couple issues and we've cleaned them up over time, but we're kind of getting the mandate now that we've got to lock them down a little tighter. It's not going to change the experience in any way other than you're going to, maybe there's certain things you won't be able to do that aren't really important. And I don't think they'll be important for how you're going to use this for studying either. So I think it's going to be a good experience still. But keep in mind, like I said, it's timed. Don't go in there and get mad when all your stuff disappears. And no, unfortunately, we can't give you an extended time lab. Because our budget and our needs for this are two different things, and they don't meet. So we need to be as judicious with the budget as we possibly can be. The other option, if you really want to try and blow up stuff, which we're engineers, so we all like to do that, right, is to build your own lab. You have some old gear at the office that just got pulled out of production. It could be a stack of old laptops, really, if you wanted to do it that way. It doesn't have to be server grade stuff. You think about it, a basic one server environment is going to let you see the dialogues and the wizards and everything like that. You could build, I know plenty of people at Veeam on their laptops have some virtual machines. They might have like one little basic virtual machine, and they have a Veeam server that they can at least get into the interface, and they can play around that way. You can use any virtualization platform to host it. So it could be, workstation. You could build yourself a little Proxmox box. And I like saying that, Proxmox box. But you could build that and have, the basic Veeam components in there. You're not going to be able to obviously do a lot of the VMware stuff. You have access to VMware keys. That's great too. I know they just changed the rules on how you can get their vmug licenses, which stinks because I was one of the people using that. Unfortunately, I have a certification with VMware still, so I can get them, but now you got to go through the Broadcom rigmarole to get your licenses, and I haven't discovered what that means yet.
Hey, Eric,
yes.
kind of have a statement slash question from Andre regarding
okay.
within the lab.
Yeah.
Internet access. How does internet access within the lab work? Is that minimal? Is it timed? Are you able to, like, if you need to go to a website from the browser, are you able to go to a website, like download an ISO or things like that?
Yeah, you can do all of that as long as you're doing good things. We are filtering against the bad, and we're going to filter a little more against the bad moving forward to keep people from, setting up, attacks from our lab. We don't want that. But yeah, we do some filtering, but for things that you would need to do for the VMCE lab, you've got internet access, and it's pretty quick too. So it's not bad for downloading an ISO into there.
Great, thanks.
The only thing you'll be constrained on is the amount of storage. So just keep an eye on that. Like I said, we run it pretty lean. We only keep up there what we need. And I think, do we even have, bear with me for a second. Let me go back to full screen here. We might actually even have, let's see here. Let's see what's on here. We had some ISOs on here at one time. We might have gotten rid of them to make space. Looks like we might have gotten rid of them to make space here. We used to have some ISOs. I don't see any hanging out there. I don't see a directory called ISO. Yeah, we had to get rid of them to make some space, but you could download them again. Just remember that you're doubling up on space. So you download it in this interface. That's, if it's a 2 gig ISO, that's 2 gigs used. You upload it into, into the storage in vSphere. That's another 2 gigs used. So as soon as you do that, delete the one so that you have space freed up, and then you build anything you're going to build thin provisioned and build it as lean as possible to make sure you can do it. But yes, you can totally do that.
Great,
But those
thanks, bud.
constraints are, hey, no problem. Those constraints are one of the reasons that I like to build my own lab as well. You can really build one on the cheap. We can get you the licenses. NFR keys are not a problem to get. If you just want to try it for 30 days while you're doing study, great. You can just download the product and use it full blown for 30 days. We know that we get that, and then after that, it reverts back to the community edition, which is doesn't have all the features you would need to study. We can get you NFR keys for permanent installs too if you're building a little lab. I have the picture there of the little Intel Nook. My lab, I'm one of those guys that I try to do the best I can on as little money as I can. And that's, I kind of like to do that. I guess it's kind of like the engineer in me. What can I MacGyver together based on what I have around or what I can get cheaply, but good. I don't want, cheap doesn't have to mean bad. I use Intel Nooks and I bought them all used. And when I see a good price on one on Amazon as used, I don't think I paid more than $240 for an i5 or i7 Nook. And then I buy, reasonably priced, high rated memory and either an SSD drive or an NVMe or both to put in there. And I have an old NAS. When I say old, the thing is old enough, almost old enough to vote at this point. It runs. And it allows me to do some things with iSCSI configurations. It allows me to I have a few different things running at home. I also have a newer Synology home NAS that I do some stuff for object storage on and some iSCSI. I do backups to the other one. I do some sample backups of the NAS backups with it. So it's kind of like you start cobbling together, collect up parts. And those of you that, are working at end user customers of Veeam, I'm sure you're all constantly doing refreshes. There's chances to get old gear in your hands. See if you can hold on to some of it and build yourself a little lab. I know I used to do that all the time when I worked for consulting companies, and I was doing upgrades for people. Like, if you don't want this, I'll take it off your hands, because usually back in the day there was no value to it and people couldn't figure out how to get rid of it anyway. So they got their 5 years out of it or whatever. I'd take it home, get another 3 or 4, and be happy. Again, old laptops make a great collection for this, because you're not looking for power. You're not looking for performance. You're not looking for, the best availability of things. You just want something that works enough that you can go in and learn. But those Nooks are terrific little things that for under $500, you can build a single node that holds several VMs and give you a chance to give things a try. And then, like I said, the one trick is now getting the VMware licensing if you want to go that route. It's a little trickier than it used to be, but I leave you to your own devices to figure out how best to get those. But if you ever, want some ideas on home labs, I'm happy to share those with you through, through community or email. And, I've given you some ideas for what I've done. Chris Huss has, like I said, probably one of the best home labs I've ever seen, and probably rivals some small business customers in a lot of ways. Probably better than most small business customers, to be quite honest with you. But we can give you some ideas on how to help with that. And we can get you the Veeam NFR keys so that you can become better with that and have it running at home. Reach out to some of the cloud providers that we have out there, and they can, maybe you can get a free account that you could use that. You can always set up within that, if you set up your own environment, set up like a Minio account, use that for object storage. Because I know understanding how object storage works, there's a good number of questions and parts of Veeam now and VBR that really focus on object storage. So understanding not how to configure it on the back end on the vendor site, but knowing how to use it from within VBR, very important. So if you can work with that, it's definitely going to help you too. We use Wasabi within the labs that we have in at least in the Americas. I'm not sure what vendor they use overseas, but in the Americas, we use Wasabi for our object storage. So you at least get to see how to connect it, but you can really play around with some things if you get your own accounts set up. So just to wrap up, I hope you understand the labs are here to help, and I hope you got some ideas of how to use them in a way that gives you the flexibility to study how you want to study. Number three, they're practice, practice, practice. Do these things almost until they become muscle memory. Then you'll be able to envision the interface and the dialog box when you get asked a question, because there's a lot of times where it's like you need to kind of know. It's like, we're not trying to pick on you to say, remember this little minute detail on this 3 deep dialog box in the interface, but we're going to ask you important things. What happens if you check this box? Go in and check that box and see what blows up, because you need to know, am I going to break the thing that I'm trying to do, or am I going to make it better? So doing that is the best way to learn. And I'm a huge fan. While I love using the hands-on labs for things, and I do it all the time, I love having my own lab too, because it's permanent. And as long as I take a couple snapshots or whatever before I can blow stuff up and continue running. And I'm running backups because I'm running VBR in my environment. So I have had to rely on those a few times when I got a little too overzealous with some things.
But don't forget, snapshots are not backups.
They are not. But if you're doing an upgrade, a snapshot before you do an upgrade is a good idea.
Absolutely.
So is a backup. I do both, but yes, I've had to pull back from those snapshots as I've made some mistakes. Let's say, I'm not saying any specific product because they all have this. Upgrades don't always go smoothly. So make sure you're prepared to be able to get back from the problems.
Yep, great. Andre, there was only one other question again from Andre.
Okay.
If there are like spelling misspellings on the lab, on these steps or items are there, who do users reach out to for spelling corrections or, wording changes
There
or
is a
suggestions like
public
that?
email address, and I believe, let me just go ahead and close this off. And I believe if we go to the, sorry, let me move that. Let me go back to the, that's not where I wanted to be, but it's where I'm going to be. So if I go back to here, there is an email address. I know that there's an email address that people use that's in here somewhere because people email us on it. Maybe it's from within here, about this lab. Huh. I know that there's a hands-on labs. I think it's HOL. I can't remember what the public one of it is. But there is an email address that is listed somewhere in here, and it might, oh, you know where you might get it is in the email that you get when your lab is ready. I'm searching
Cool.
my personal email to see if I have any. Yep. Let's see. Huh, no, it does not give you one.
Of course.
No, it does, but there is a lab. There's one that I know is public somewhere because people email us on it all the time. What I don't know is, does it come up when we click on here? No.
I actually see this for Andre, but for everybody, it looks like I see on the Veeam Hands-On Lab page on the Community Hub site, it looks like who's on there? Chan, Ian, and Chris. They, for their disclaimer, they have an email address on the main Hands-On Lab page on the Community Hub site, veeam.handsonlabs@veeam.com.
That's
You
the
can
one.
probably,
That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
yeah, you can probably, um, you can probably, uh, submit an email with any suggestions you have.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, because that
to
Chen
that
is the one
website.
that's going to be running. He's the one that's going to be kind of like the central point for the public facing labs once we start making all those changes. It kind of is already, but he's the one that's leading the drive to centralize everything. So he would know best which email address, and that is the good one.
Great. And I put the link to that in the chat.
Excellent.
And that is all. Is there any other questions from anyone
See, we
before
got
we
something in
end
Q&A. Make sure we answered those.
this
I saw.
this session?
Oh, here we
Yeah,
go.
it said something about the URLs. If you are able to copy
Yep,
and paste those from your prezo and put them in the chat, that would be good. Otherwise, I had
absolutely.
suggested in the chat earlier about those URLs. I am posting this video, which will be edited and that kind of thing, for being viewable and postable on the community hub site on the VMCE study hall page in a few days or so. And you can, obviously, you'll be able to um, see the URLs again by watching the video. But if you
So
are able to, Eric, share those URLs, that would be great.
they are
This
coming through right now.
cool.
There you
All
go. So
right.
there's a couple in there. So there you go. Those are the public facing ones. Pro Partner is well, I'll put the Pro Partner one in there too. For again, remember this is America's. I think Pro Partner experience is a little different depending on which continent you're on. Um, but I only have access to the Americas, so I can't vouch for the other ones.
Great.
So there's
And
all
again,
that's all the links to the labs. Yep.
great. Thank you.
There was
And
one other
again,
question in the Q&A too about an expired message. So I would use that email address and make sure that you give the people in that email address the details of what lab it is, when you had the error, and then they'll be able to help you with that. Because yeah, those do expire. The codes that we have in there, we go back and forth about this. We reset them. We actually reset the expiration. We can't reset the codes per se because they're coded into things. But somebody will definitely be able to help you with that. It's one of those things that we may not even know until you until you bring it to our attention. Unfortunately, it's a combination of too many and too few cooks in the kitchen. We all have our things we're doing, and then we kind of also have day jobs. It's all, we'll call it volunteer work, that we're doing it. So we do our best
are
to stay on top of things, but sometimes, just letting us know that stuff, we can fix it quickly.
right. Are there, I think there are, again, if you, for those who don't do so, I recommend doing so, but follow that Veeam Hands-On Lab page on the Community Hub site. As new labs are created, they're pretty good about sharing those on that Hands-On Lab page. So a question there in the chat, I don't know that you saw it, Eric. Are there labs for other hypervisors like Nutanix and Proxmox? I want to say
So
there
we
are
are building, yes, we are building some
some being worked
migration
on,
labs.
right? Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
So I know, so for our partners, we're working on workshops that are going to work around migration. We're actually going to have something to Veeam on for that. If all goes according to plan, we're going to have a migration workshop during Veeam on, and we're going to have a security workshop using the hands-on labs at Veeam on. Just waiting for the final approval to come through from the teams, but they asked us to do it. So if they don't approve it, I don't know what to do because they're the ones that asked us to put the request in to do it, to be presenters for it. So we'll see what happens. So that's one way to do it. Yes, there are things. Now I will tell you that when Chan puts things in the community, the labs he's referring to are the EMEA labs. So make sure that and I don't care where you live, you can use the EMEA link. It's just that that's how they're maintained. So what's happening is we have 3 different looks for it. But when Chan says, hey, there's a new lab out here, that's the EMEA link. So
Are
just
there
know that.
latency issues connecting
No, because
from the
the back end is
Americas? Okay.
RDP, so it's pretty quick.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All
we
right.
use, I
Any
mean,
other?
for example, those of you that were at Veeam 100 that actually finally did get into the lab that we did for Orchestrator. Yeah, yeah, I still battle scars from that one, but
He's talking about,
but
for those that don't know, he's talking about a lab we did at the summit that was a little
yeah,
bit, uh, mm, we'll just say challenging.
yeah, yeah. Those challenges
Anyway,
notwithstanding, when it finally ran, when we stopped bootstorming the thing, it was they were running in Sterling, Virginia, and we were sitting in Berlin, Germany, and the actual performance once things were running no problems. The problems we had is we all hit the same disk at the same time, basically, and just the network and crushed the back end of it. But as far as individual experience, it'll be great. No issues because it's just an RDP interface inside of a web page.
Cool. Any other questions for Eric before we go ahead and end this webinar? Okay, that is pretty much all we have, Eric, unless you have anything final. Again, I will have this recording on the VMCE study hall page here in a few days with the help of Sophia Muhammad, one of the product strategy analysts at Veeam, who will help me get it edited and posted there. Otherwise, that's pretty much it. If you have any other questions or anything like that about VMCE, go ahead and visit us on the VMCE Study Hall page or the Hands-On Lab page on the Community Hub, and I hope you have a good rest of your Thursday. Thanks again, Eric. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.